The ground in Russia is literally melting away. Across Siberia, entire cities are sinking as permafrost, soil that's been frozen for thousands of years, turns to mud beneath them. Buildings collapse, roads buckle and split, railway lines warp like toys in the sun. In Norilsk, Russia's northernmost city, over 60% of structures now show critical damage, with families being evacuated from their homes in the middle of the night as foundations crumble beneath them. But that's not even the most terrifying part. It's already too late to stop it. While the world focuses on Russia's war in Ukraine, an existential crisis is silently unfolding across 77% of Russian territory. Siberia alone, about 1.12 times larger than the combined size of the United States and Mexico, is at the heart of this crisis. The Siberian Curse isn't some future threat. It's here now, rapidly dismantling what was once considered a superpower from within. And what you're about to discover about Russia's true vulnerability will fundamentally change how you see this supposed global power. So what exactly is the Siberian Curse? It's the brutal geographic reality that Russia's greatest asset, its vast territory, is actually its deadliest liability. Russia spans 11 time zones, with much of its landmass situated in some of the harshest, coldest regions on Earth. According to recent analyses, maintaining basic infrastructure in Siberia costs significantly more, around 3 to 5 times than it does in Western Russia. And as climate change accelerates, thawing permafrost and extreme weather are driving those costs beyond what even a stable Russian economy could sustain. But if you think that's bad, what's coming next is even worse. Despite encompassing approximately 17.1 million square kilometers, the largest country on Earth, only about 7.4% of Russia's land is arable. The rest is either too cold, too remote, or increasingly unstable as the permafrost melts. And this brings us to the first deadly component of the Siberian Curse. Climate change is hitting Russia harder than almost anywhere else on Earth, according to research published by Russia's own Ministry of Natural Resources in October 2024. Average temperatures across Russia are rising 2.5 times faster than the global average. In Siberia specifically, it's warming nearly 4 times faster. The consequences are already visible from space. NASA satellite imagery from 2024 shows permafrost thaw has created more than 7,000 new lakes across Siberia in just the last 5 years. That's not gradual change. That's geographical collapse happening in real time. But the real catastrophe lies beneath the surface. Siberia's permafrost contains an estimated 1.6 trillion tons of carbon, twice the amount currently in our atmosphere. As it thaws, this carbon is released primarily as carbon dioxide, but also as methane, a greenhouse gas 28 times more potent than CO2. Russia's own scientists at the Melnikov Permafrost Institute now predict that by 2030, permafrost thaw could be releasing more greenhouse gases annually than all of the European Union's emissions combined. So Russia isn't just a victim of climate change, it's becoming one of its primary accelerants. Talk about a vicious cycle. If you think that's ironic, wait till you hear this next part. Russia is one of the few countries that could theoretically benefit from a warming world, longer growing seasons in Siberia, new shipping routes through the Arctic, access to previously unreachable resources. Yet, in a twist of geopolitical fate, Russia can't capitalize on any of these potential benefits because its infrastructure is literally falling apart faster than it can be rebuilt. Let's talk about numbers. According to a 2024 assessment by Russia's Ministry of Construction, over 40% of all buildings in permafrost regions are showing signs of structural damage due to ground instability. In cities like Yakutsk, the world's coldest major city, that figure climbs to nearly 60%. The costs are staggering. Russia's own finance ministry estimates that permafrost-related infrastructure damage will cost at least $97 billion by 2050. But here's the shocking truth they're hiding. Internal government assessments leaked to Russian business newspaper Kommersant in January 2025 suggest the actual figure could exceed $250 billion. That's roughly 15% of Russia's entire GDP, just to keep existing infrastructure from collapsing. And what about building new infrastructure? That's where the Siberian Curse truly reveals its devastating power. You see, after Western sanctions crippled Russia's access to European markets, Putin made a dramatic pivot east. "We'll develop Siberia," he declared in May 2024, announcing what he called the New Development of Siberia Mega Project, a supposed 21st century parallel to the Trans-Siberian Railway. The plan sounded impressive: new industrial centers, transportation corridors, and energy infrastructure across Siberia and the Russian Far East, creating a new economic geography that would make Russia independent from Western markets. There was just one problem, one giant, insurmountable problem that makes Russia's eastern pivot doomed to fail: distance. Unlike Americans who built their coast-to-coast transportation networks across relatively hospitable terrain, Russians face a far more daunting challenge. The distances in Siberia are mind-boggling, and the conditions are brutal. Building a highway in Siberia costs up to 7 times more than in central Russia due to permafrost engineering requirements. Operating railways cost up to 5 times more. And maintaining any infrastructure means battling temperature ranges that can swing 80 degrees Celsius between summer and winter. But that's just the beginning of Russia's geographic nightmare. Russia's economic geography is fundamentally broken. Its major population centers are separated from each other by thousands of kilometers of barely habitable land. Its industrial heartland is in the west, far from its resource wealth in the east. And connecting these distant regions requires infrastructure that is increasingly vulnerable to climate change. How bad is it? In February 2024, Russia's Federal Service for Hydrometeorology and Environmental Monitoring reported that permafrost degradation was progressing substantially faster than predicted, with some regions seeing thaw depths increase by over 30% in just 5 years. Emergency repair costs for railways, roads, and pipelines in Siberia have tripled since 2020. The situation is so dire that in July 2024, a section of the Baikal-Amur main line, a critical railway connecting Russia's Far East with its western regions, had to be completely rebuilt after permafrost thaw caused rails to shift by nearly 2 meters. The repairs took 3 months and cost over $50 million for just 12 kilometers of track. But wait, doesn't Russia have vast natural resources in Siberia? Isn't that its economic salvation? That's what Putin is betting on, but here's the brutal reality. Russia's resource wealth is increasingly a mirage. The easier-to-access deposits have already been exploited. What remains is in remote, hostile environments where extraction costs are skyrocketing due to climate instability. Take oil and gas, the backbone of Russia's economy. According to Russia's Ministry of Energy, production costs for new Siberian oil fields are up to 4 times higher than those in western Siberia, where production is already declining. Worse yet, as permafrost thaws, existing pipelines are at growing risk of rupture. In 2024 alone, Russia's state environmental watchdog recorded over 100 significant oil spills from damaged Siberian infrastructure, a 40% increase from 2023. Each one costs millions to clean up, if they're addressed at all. The most dramatic example occurred in May 2024 when a pipeline in the Khonty-Mansi region ruptured after ground subsidence, spilling over 20,000 tons of crude oil into the surrounding ecosystem. The cleanup operation is still ongoing, with estimated cost already exceeding $150 million. But the resource mirage goes beyond fossil fuels. Russia claims to have among the world's largest reserves of critical minerals needed for the green transition: nickel, copper, platinum, palladium, and rare earth elements, the kind of resources that should make Russia indispensable to the global economy. Yet, in a telling example of the Siberian Curse in action, these resources remain largely untapped because the cost of extraction and transportation from remote Siberian locations make them uncompetitive on global markets. What's especially alarming for Russia's future is the collapse of its ambitious Arctic development plans. In January 2025, Rosatom, Russia's state nuclear corporation responsible for developing the Northern Sea Route, reported that shipping volumes along the Arctic Passage had fallen by 18% year-over-year, despite projections of rapid growth. The reason? Unpredictable ice conditions caused by climate change, making shipping schedules impossible to maintain, even with Russia's nuclear icebreaker fleet. Russian officials had projected that the Northern Sea Route would handle 80 million tons of cargo by 2024, but actual volumes reached just 36 million tons, less than half the target. The shortfall represents not just an economic disappointment, but a strategic failure in Russia's attempt to create a viable alternative to traditional shipping routes through the Suez Canal. And just when you thought Russia's geographic problems couldn't get worse, they do. Perhaps the most underreported aspect of Russia's Siberian crisis is this: people are leaving, and they're not coming back. The population of Siberia and the Russian Far East has been shrinking for decades. But recent data from Russia's Federal State Statistics Service shows this decline accelerating dramatically. Since 2022, the population of Russia's eastern regions has decreased by nearly 500,000 people, about 3% of the total. Young people in particular are fleeing for Western Russia or leaving the country entirely. The average age in Siberian cities is now over 44 years, significantly higher than Russia's already concerning national average of 40.5 years. This demographic disaster creates a self-reinforcing cycle. Fewer people means less economic activity. Less economic activity means fewer jobs. Fewer jobs accelerates population decline. And all of this happens while the cost of maintaining basic infrastructure keeps rising. In the town of Vorkuta, once a thriving coal mining center in Russia's Arctic, the population has fallen from 115,000 in 1989 to under 50,000 today. Entire neighborhoods have been abandoned, with buildings left to crumble as the ground beneath them falls. In 2024, the local government announced plans to demolish over 100 empty apartment buildings because it could no longer afford to maintain them. This pattern is repeating across Siberia, a slow-motion collapse that Putin's government seems powerless to stop. But here's where the Siberian Curse truly becomes an existential threat to Russia's future. It's undermining the country's military capabilities at the precise moment when Putin needs them most. With Russia bogged down in Ukraine and increasingly isolated internationally, maintaining control over its vast territory is more important than ever for the Kremlin. But how do you defend a territory that's literally falling apart? The Russian military is struggling with this very question. According to a 2024 report from the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, Russia now spends approximately 7% of its defense budget just maintaining military installations in permafrost regions, money that could otherwise go toward weapons, training, or operations in Ukraine. More troubling for Putin, the infrastructure linking Russia's western military districts with its eastern ones is increasingly vulnerable. The Trans-Siberian Railway, critical for moving troops and equipment across the country, experienced over 30 major disruptions due to permafrost-related issues in 2024 alone, according to Russian Railways' own data. These aren't just inconveniences, they're strategic vulnerabilities that compromise Russia's ability to defend its eastern territories, particularly as China's influence in the region grows. What might shock you even more is how Russia's military planning is being directly compromised by climate change. In September 2024, satellite imagery revealed that Russia's Northern Fleet submarine base at Gajievo was experiencing unprecedented shore erosion due to permafrost thaw, threatening critical nuclear submarine facilities. According to naval analysts at the Royal United Services Institute, the Russian Navy has already been forced to reduce operations at the base while emergency stabilization work is carried out, a direct hit to Russia's nuclear deterrence capabilities. What you're about to find out next explains why China might be the biggest beneficiary of Russia's Siberian nightmare. After being cut off from Western capital and technology, Russia turned to China for investment in Siberian development projects. One-sided. Chinese companies now control significant stakes in key Siberian resource extraction operations, often securing prices well below market rates. A perfect example is the Tamtor rare earth deposit project in the Sakha Republic, one of the world's largest and richest rare earth element deposits, crucial for everything from electric vehicles to missile guidance systems. In November 2024, Putin personally scolded the operators of Tamtor for development delays, calling the situation unacceptable. What he didn't mention was that Russia lacks both the capital and technology to develop the deposit independently. The Chinese companies that could help are demanding ownership stakes of up to 70%, effectively transferring control of this strategic resource to Beijing. This is the Siberian Curse in its starkest form. Russia controls vast natural wealth but cannot extract it without becoming dependent on others, undermining the very sovereignty Putin claims to be defending. If you think that's bad, the environmental crisis unfolding is even more shocking. In August 2024, Siberia experienced its most severe wildfire season on record, with over 21.7 million acres, 8.8 million hectares, burned, an area roughly the size of Portugal. Fighting these fires cost an estimated $3 billion, draining resources that could have gone toward infrastructure maintenance or economic development. In July 2020, the Siberian city of Norilsk, home to some of Russia's most important nickel and palladium mining operations, recorded temperatures of 32 degrees Celsius, 90 degrees Fahrenheit, nearly 18 degrees above historical averages. The heat caused permafrost thaw that damaged buildings, roads, and industrial facilities, temporarily halting production at several mining sites. These are not isolated incidents. They're the new normal in a rapidly warming Siberia, and Russia's ability to adapt is severely constrained by its strained finances, technological isolation, and the sheer scale of the challenge. But perhaps the most alarming development of all is the emergence of what scientists call zombie fires, wildfires that smolder underground in peat soils throughout the winter only to re-emerge in spring. In 2024, Russian emergency services documented over 150 such fires, consuming resources and threatening communities in ways that were virtually unknown a decade ago. Then there are the craters, massive holes suddenly appearing in the Siberian landscape as methane gas, trapped for millennia in the permafrost, explosively releases. The largest discovery in 2024 in the Yamal Peninsula measured over 50 meters in diameter and 30 meters deep, large enough to swallow a small apartment building. Scientists fear these craters will become increasingly common as permafrost thaw accelerates, posing unpredictable risks to infrastructure and human settlements. In March 2024, one such crater formed just 700 meters from a major gas pipeline, prompting emergency measures to prevent a potentially catastrophic explosion. But if you think environmental disasters are the worst of it, the health crisis unfolding across Siberia will make you think again. As permafrost thaws, it's releasing more than just carbon. Scientists have discovered ancient bacteria and viruses, some dormant for tens of thousands of years, being reactivated as the ground warms. In summer 2024, an outbreak of anthrax in the Yamal Peninsula infected 21 people and killed over 2,500 reindeer after the pathogen was released from thawing permafrost. Russian health authorities are now monitoring over 400 sites across Siberia where similar zombie pathogens might emerge. Even more alarming is what's happening to Siberia's water supply. A 2024 study by Moscow State University found that permafrost thaw is releasing unprecedented levels of mercury and other heavy metals into Siberian water systems. In the Lena River Basin, home to over 2 million people, mercury concentrations have increased by 300% since 2010, creating what researchers called a slow-motion public health disaster. The economic costs of these emerging health crises are immense. According to Russia's Ministry of Health, medical expenditures in Siberian regions increased by 47% between 2020 and 2024, primarily due to conditions linked to environmental degradation. With Russia's healthcare system already strained by sanctions limiting access to Western medical equipment and pharmaceuticals, this additional burden comes at the worst possible time. And that's not just a humanitarian concern, it's a demographic time bomb. Russia's population is already shrinking nationwide, but in Siberia, the combination of outmigration and deteriorating health conditions is creating what demographers call a population collapse spiral. Some remote Siberian communities have lost up to 40% of their residents in just the last decade. Many of those leaving are doctors, engineers, and other professionals whose skills are essential for maintaining infrastructure and public services. This brings us to another dimension of the Siberian Curse that's rarely discussed: its devastating impact on Russia's indigenous people. Siberia is home to dozens of indigenous groups whose traditional ways of life are intimately connected to the land. As permafrost thaws and ecosystems transform, these communities are losing not just their livelihoods but their entire cultural identity. Take the Nenets people of the Yamal Peninsula. For centuries, they've practiced reindeer herding across stable tundra landscapes. Now, new lakes and unstable ground are fragmenting migration routes that have existed for generations. According to a 2024 survey by the Russian Association of Indigenous Peoples of the North, over 60% of Nenets herders report that climate change has made traditional herding patterns impossible to maintain. The Russian government's response? Resettle these communities into urban centers, effectively ending cultural traditions that have survived for millennia. This forced urbanization is creating new social problems, from alcoholism to unemployment, further straining local resources and healthcare systems. But perhaps the most immediate threat to Russia's territorial integrity comes from the rapid deterioration of its border infrastructure. Russia shares a 4,300-kilometer border with China, much of it running through Siberia. Maintaining this border has always been challenging, but climate change is making it nearly impossible in some regions. Border posts are sinking into thawing ground. Surveillance systems are failing as power infrastructure collapses, and patrol roads are becoming seasonally impassable. According to a classified report leaked to independent Russian news outlet Meduza in October 2024, Russia's Federal Security Service has identified over 300 kilometers of the Chinese border where effective surveillance and control can no longer be guaranteed due to infrastructure deterioration. The report described these areas as functionally porous, suggesting that Russia's ability to monitor and control movement across its borders is compromised. This border vulnerability creates both security and sovereignty concerns. With China's growing economic presence in the Russian Far East, many Russian security analysts fear a gradual erosion of Moscow's effective control over these regions, not through military invasion, but through economic penetration and demographic change. Chinese businesses already dominate many local economies in the Russian Far East. In cities like Khabarovsk and Vladivostok, Chinese investment accounts for over 60% of new commercial development. Chinese workers are increasingly filling labor shortages as Russians leave. And Chinese farmers now lease over 500,000 hectares of Russian agricultural land, a figure that has doubled since 2020. This economic dependency comes with political implications. Local officials in Siberian regions are increasingly looking to Beijing rather than Moscow for development funding and infrastructure support. A 2024 survey of regional administrators in the Russian Far East found that 68% had made official visits to China in the past year, compared to just 31% who have traveled to Moscow. For Putin, whose political legitimacy rests heavily on his image as a defender of Russian sovereignty, this gradual loss of control over Russia's eastern territories represents a profound threat, one that military power cannot easily address. What might be the most alarming development for Moscow came in April 2025, when authorities in the Primorsky Krai region signed a direct agreement with China's Heilongjiang province for cross-border infrastructure development without first securing approval from federal authorities. The agreement, which included plans for 3 new border crossings and a joint economic zone, was officially justified as emergency economic measures. But Moscow insiders saw it as something far more concerning: the beginning of regional authorities bypassing the Kremlin entirely in their dealings with China. So what does all this mean for Russia's future? The Siberian Curse is creating a perfect storm that threatens to accelerate Russia's decline as a global power. The cost of maintaining Siberia are rising, just as Russia's income is falling due to sanctions and the global energy transition. Its population is shrinking and aging, particularly in the regions that hold its greatest resource wealth. And climate change is damaging infrastructure faster than it can be repaired, let alone expanded. This isn't just an environmental crisis or an economic challenge. It's an existential threat to Russia as we know it. Russian officials understand this better than they publicly admit. In private meetings reported by Russian business daily Vedomosti in December 2024, senior government figures discussed scenarios where parts of eastern Siberia might effectively become administratively autonomous due to Moscow's inability to maintain meaningful control. Such an admission would have been unthinkable just a few years ago. Today, it reflects the growing recognition within Russia's ruling circles that the Siberian Curse might be inescapable. For a country whose identity is so deeply tied to its territorial vastness, the prospect of losing effective control over much of that territory represents a profound psychological as well as strategic blow. It strikes at the very core of Russian exceptionalism, the belief that Russia's unique geography and destiny set it apart from other nations. What makes this situation particularly devastating for Putin's government is that it exposes the fundamental contradictions in Russia's national narrative. For decades, Russian leaders have boasted about their country's boundless natural resources and territorial expanse. Now, those same features are becoming liabilities that undermine Russia's power rather than enhance it. The most shocking evidence of this came in April 2024, when leaked minutes from a closed-door meeting of Russia's Security Council revealed that officials are now considering the unthinkable: the possibility of voluntary territorial consolidation, effectively abandoning direct governance of some remote Siberian regions to focus resources on more viable areas. The bitter irony is that Russia's invasion of Ukraine, ostensibly launched to expand Russian territory and influence, has accelerated these internal geographic threats by straining the country's finances, isolating it technologically, and diverting resources that could have gone toward addressing the Siberian crisis. As permafrost continues to thaw, as infrastructure continues to crumble, as people continue to leave, and as Russia's ability to respond continues to weaken, the Siberian Curse will only tighten its grip. The world's largest country is caught in a geographic trap of its own making, facing challenges that cannot be resolved through military force or political repression, Putin's preferred tools. No amount of nationalist rhetoric or great power nostalgia can refreeze the permafrost or make Siberia's vast distances disappear. This is the reality that Russia's leaders desperately try to obscure with geopolitical aggression and nuclear saber-rattling. But while the world's attention is fixed on Russia's external actions, the country is literally melting from within. The Siberian Curse isn't just threatening Russia, it's killing it, one thawing kilometer at a time. So what do you think? Is Russia's geographic predicament truly inescapable? Could technological breakthroughs or political reforms alter this trajectory? Or are we witnessing the beginning of the end for Russia as a unified state? Let us know what you think in the comments below. And make sure you watch How Vodka Destroyed Russia and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos.